Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about Brazil Philodendron. This is one of my favorite plants currently, and the reason it's one of my favorite plants is, first of all, look at the leaves. They're so beautiful. I mean, just check out the pattern of these. It's just amazing. And do you see this plant that I have bought very recently? It has grown so well, so huge in such a little bit of time. You can see that there are at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 10 points of growth. So, this plant is one of the best growing plants in this weather, which is very hot and humid here in Kolkata. If you live in hot and humid weather, if you live in hot tropical weather, and you can add humidity by adding a humidifier, but this will grow very well in that. Let's talk about what is the requirement of this plant. The one of the major requirement of this plant is bright indirect light. So you see the beautiful patterns in the leaves. That only comes in if you provide it with bright indirect light. If you want to check whether a light is bright indirect light or not, you should be able to read a book very comfortably, like paper book very comfortably in that location. Preferably, for example, I've kept this plant in the northwestern side of window, near a window, so it gets very bright light during the sunset time. So let's talk about watering. Yeah, this plant loves to be dry. They don't like wet feet. They actually survive better. They actually grow better if you allow it to dry completely in between waterings. So, for example, let me show you one of the plants. Do you see how dry the soil is? Completely bone dry. So this plant, even though this is completely bone dry right now, I can leave it without watering for a couple more days. So I can just water it day after tomorrow, and that's completely fine, and they'll do just fine. So watering needs is something that probably I water them very thoroughly. Once I water them, I take them under the sink and completely drench them in water. You can't just water it on the top part of the soil. You have to water it completely. And we talked about soil requirement. We talked about light requirement. We actually talked about water requirement. So let's talk about soil requirement. They like normal garden soil, which drains well and which doesn't retain much of water. They also don't like very barky soil that is of succulents. So they like normal garden soil. That's it. So the next part would be fertilizer. So let's talk about what kind of fertilizer it needs. During growing season, what I usually use is liquid fertilizer, the seaweed fertilizer that I have once every month, or if I don't, I alternate between liquid fertilizer and vermicompost. So either one of them. Don't give everything, and because at that point you'll risk burning up the plant because of over fertilizing. Try to stay on the safer side. If you miss fertilization, that is fine, but don't over fertilize any plant, especially these plants. So yeah, we talked about all of those things. Now let's talk about one of the mistakes I made in one of the earlier plants that I had, Brazil Philodendron, was I planted it in a very large basket along with some other philodendrons, but I just had one stalk. And what happened was, mistake number one was it will focus on not growing leaves, but it will focus on establishing roots. The mistake number two in the same basket, what happened was, whenever I was watering it, it was retaining more and more water. If it retains more water, it has wet feet for a longer period of time, it's not drying up, so the plant starts deteriorating. It started losing leaves, and then some leaves got yellow, and some leaves started falling off. And as I just had one stalk, I could not even save by propagating, because unless you have at least multiple nodes, a large stalk, or multiple stalks. It's very difficult to propagate, right? Because not all propagation stems will survive. So yeah, I think I've had very huge difficulty in procuring a large Brazil philodendron. This is the first time I have a large Brazil philodendron. I bought it from soiled, and the other one, the smaller one, is from this one that I showed you. The soil from this one is from Four Seasons. This one was bought from Amazon. The large one that you're seeing, this entire piece plant was bought from soiled. So I was very happy with that this is the first time I gotten such a large plant. And you can see how many stalks there are in a single plant. But despite the sprawling nature of this plant, I have kept it in a smaller pot right now because I want this to be root bound. And once it stays there for a couple of months, I will shift it to a larger pot, but not a very large pot. So yeah, light is required because of its beautiful patterns. If you don't provide it bright indirect light, these patterns will start fading. So it will start producing normal green leaves, which is the normal philodendron. You'll not get such a beautiful pattern like this. Don't overwater these plants. Don't require any of your attention at all. You can just leave them for a week in Kolkata weather, let them dry out completely, and then drench them with water again, and that's completely fine. They are very tolerant of these kind of weather. So especially Indian weather is something that where these plants do very well. I think this is one of my favorite plants because of that reason. So let's talk about propagation. I don't like cutting up a plant because, frankly, it's very difficult to get a large plant, first of all, and larger plants are costly. And if I cut it off, there's a risk that I'll lose the propagation stems. If it dies while getting transplanted, there's always a risk, right? Unless I have a very large plant, I can't have multiple cuttings to grow it from. So what I usually use in philodendrons in general is that I use a pinning method. So for example, to make a plant bushy, what I would do is I would just pin them. I don't know if you can see. Do you see a pin here? So the pin will actually enable it to grow roots from here. So you put a node, stick it in the soil, and put a bobby pin on top of it. So what happens is the node will start, once you start watering and everything, the node will start growing roots as well. So it will start getting bushier and bushier, right? So that's the idea. But the greatest advantage of this pinning method that I also talked about in another video of philodendrons is that you don't risk losing your plant. It's literally a no risk propagation. If it goes well, you get more bushier plant. If it doesn't, you can just take out the bobby pin and pull off the plant and let it trail. So there's no risk absolutely. So I love this bobby pin method actually. So for any kind of propagating and all of that, you can try bobby pin method, because if you want direct soil propagation, instead of cutting the entire plant out and then putting it in soil, you just take a branch of it. Either you pull this branch into the same pot itself and pin it, or you can take a pot beside it and pin it there. Either of that. But you have to water the parts that are pinned down so that it can encourage the growth of roots from that node. So yeah, that's pretty much about what propagating, because this is my favorite method of propagating. I have not propagated Brazil philodendron till now because I don't have such a large trailing plant, but it works the same way as normal philodendrons too. So I guess that's pretty much summarizes one of the favorite plants currently. And just look at the beauty of this plant. Do you see this sprawl? they have tried to entangle together. It's just growing madness. You see, the new leaves are growing even before the previous leaf has completely unfurled. That's how spontaneously these are growing right now. And I'm just amazed. You see the size of this plant? Currently, I'm going to move the tripod so that you can see. This is the extent of the plant completely. This can make a very good basket. I'm gonna soon do it and show you how it looks in a complete basket. I'm not gonna shift it now. That's the mistake I did previously. I'm gonna shift it after a couple of months. Once it gets acclimatized to this pot and gets completely root bound, then I'm gonna shift it to a larger pot. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Do get this plant if you live in an Indian tropical weather. One of the very good plants, very good looking plant, and it will stand out in the crowd. So that's pretty much it from my side about this plant. Subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more plant related videos. Also follow me on Facebook, Instagram to get daily updates on plant related bonanzas. Those are all linked in this video. Do check them out. Thanks for watching.